Joining us now to talk about the latest in national and worldwide politics and how that impacts us right here in Oakland County is Dave Dulio, Distinguished Professor of Political Science at Oakland University, where he also serves as the Director for their Center for Civic Engagement. Dave, thank you as always for being with us.
Hey, good morning, Tyler. Thanks for having me.
Glad to have you on. Some big news over the weekend in Oakland County as even Mother Nature couldn't stop the Oakland County GOP from officially naming Donald J. Trump, former president of the United States, their man of the decade. And so as we take a look back at the last 10 or so years in American politics, and particularly in Oakland County politics, it's been a time of shifting narratives, of shifting politics. Certainly, what sort of impact has Donald Trump had specifically on our local area and our local politics and statewide politics from Oakland County outward?
Well, I think, Donald Trump is one factor in Oakland County's shift that has taken place over the last certainly more than 10 years, at least back to the turn of the 21st century. But I think, Trump really he didn't hasten it, but he certainly added to the shift that's occurred in Oakland County, with it moving from a very reliable Republican source of votes to one that is to a county that's Democratic, right? We have a Democratic county executive. We have a majority of the county commission elected as Democrats. And we can go back to 2016, obviously Trump's first run for the White House, and he had success here, won the state of Michigan by a very slim margin, but won the state regardless. And, after that, a lot of folks in Oakland County, including those who gave Trump a chance in 2016, fled him very quickly. In 2018, 2020, and 2022, in each of those election cycles, we saw folks who may have voted for Trump initially abandon him and abandon his chosen candidates. The most recent, of course, being the gubernatorial race when Gretchen Whitmer won Oakland County by 145,000 votes. Republicans can't have success statewide if they lose Oakland County by 145,000 votes. They just can't make them up elsewhere.
And in terms of where that future goes, he's still going to have a massive impact in 2024, and win or lose would certainly continue to have a significant impact as we get through the rest of the 2020s and beyond in politics here in Oakland County, outwardly to the state of Michigan, and certainly nationally. In terms of the viability of his campaign, we know that there have been some hits, but also some benefits to his recent charges on the federal level of over 30 charges of mishandling classified and top secret documents. This week, some audio being released to several news outlets of him on the phone talking about his possession of these papers. And so it makes an interesting dynamic here and potentially interesting situation where while he's being tried in the courts for these, the court of public opinion getting more and more of this evidence leaked to the press could ultimately put him on trial in his campaign and could potentially be a detractor to him. How may that be the case as more of this evidence comes out? Could it help him even more, or would it presumably hurt him more, depending on how damning that evidence is?
Well, to this point, you make a good point. There have been some positives and negatives, but I think they're actually one and the same. and you mentioned it. He has been able to take advantage of this negative news by playing the victim, and certainly his ardent supporters are not going to leave him because of it. They're likely even more emboldened in their support for the former president, and it's those other ones who are thinking about supporting Trump in the Republican primary or thinking about somebody else, and what do they do with it, right? And I think that those are the key folks, as well as those Trump supporters who aren't maybe as solid in their support, who might be convinced to go another way. And I think when we see tapes like the one that was leaked, when we see, there's bound to be other stuff that comes out in the coming weeks and months. Maybe that starts to chip away at it, but I don't think that we'll see much of any movement until and unless we see more evidence of Trump's electability in the general election be questioned. And I think, we're still at the point where that's not got a whole lot of focus, but if it becomes clear in through the rest of this year and early 2024, if Trump is seen as somebody who can't beat either, whatever Democrat, let's Joe Biden is going to get the Democratic nomination, but if he's seen as somebody who can't beat Biden by a bigger part of the nation, then maybe Republicans start looking somewhere else for somebody who can beat Biden. But what's interesting is I just saw some polling before we hopped on, and enormous majorities. I don't use that word lightly, right? Huge majorities of the Republican primary electorate. Even those folks who think who say that they are not going to support Trump, and those who think that he did something wrong with those documents, even those groups of folks think that the Justice Department is going after him in a political way, right? So if those folks are convinced that it's a political prosecution, just imagine how ardent those true supporters are.
And that's not been anything that's out of the ordinary for what we've seen in recent years with Donald Trump in politics. So whether it's been Republicans in power in the House of Representatives or Democrats in power, of course, Trump being impeached not once but twice while president, and now House Republicans, especially those on the further side of the right side of the aisle, are making threats that they're going to put articles of impeachment forward for Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, for Attorney General Merrick Garland, and even as high as for the President of the United States. Does this seem like the way that we are going to be going forward, where if I can't beat your side's candidate, I'm simply just going to impeach them?
Yeah, I think it is. I think that we're going to be in some version of impeachment tit for tat, right? Where we're going to see, and look, it's not like it was never the case before. There were articles of impeachment rumored for George W. Bush. Certainly Bill Clinton was impeached. And maybe that's where it started, right? With Republicans' impeachment of Bill Clinton in the late 90s. But, certainly I think that there's not a whole lot of cost politically to Republicans who say that they want to impeach, the Secretary of Homeland Security, the Attorney General, or even the President of the United States, right? It plays to their base. We are remaining in this period of elected officials, a large number of them playing only to their base, thinking only about their base, not looking for, I'll say pragmatic or middle of the road solutions that independent voters, that moderate voters are looking for.
Joining us on today's show, as always, to talk about the latest in Michigan and national politics is Dave Dulio, distinguished professor of political science at Oakland University, where he also serves as the director for their Center for Civic Engagement. More information, especially as we get into 2024's presidential primaries and the general election, oakland.edu/CCE. And Dave, before we go today, I want to talk about what happened last weekend in Russia, the uprising from the Wagner Group and Prigozhin, and how that may impact our candidates, particularly in the primary season. Being able to manage international relations, especially with adversaries like Russia, it's been something that's already been a talking point. But now after this, how much more of a sticking point does that become for candidates, particularly on the Republican side where there's a competitive primary, but really across the board?
Yeah, I'm not so sure that the failed coup in Russia is gonna be that important in the Republican primary. Had it taken longer to fizzle, or had it been successful, I think it would have been a front burner, top of mind issue. But because it lasted seemingly, a day and a half, I don't think you're going to see much of it. I think the bigger question is going to be about aid to Ukraine and how candidates tackle that question, whether or not they think we should continue the aggressive aid that's been flowing from the United States, or whether it's time to back off on that. I think you're going to see varied and very different responses from the GOP primary candidates. We certainly know how President Biden views this, and it'll be interesting to see the contrasts that are drawn between the sitting president and the field of GOP candidates.
And as things change, as things develop and more stories come along and impact these candidates, both on the Republican side of the aisle as well as President Joe Biden, as well as other stories affecting Michigan politics and right here in Oakland County, we'll continue to go back to Dave Dulio from Oakland University. Dave, thank you so much for being with us this week.
Sure thing, Tyler. Thanks.